You aren't alone. No matter how old you get in this life, there is so much hope. I'm Maria. This is the Strong Body, Strong Soul show. We're talking about isolation. Life is so beautiful. I'm so excited to share this interview with you. The diversity of life is amazing. Lisa Evans Powell is joining us today to talk about how to care for the elders in our communities. Don't be scared. It's going to be a fun interview. I promise. Hello, and welcome to the Strong Body, Strong Soul show. I am so grateful that you're spending a few minutes of your time here. I hope you get a lot out of this particular interview right now. I'm Maria, but this right here, this is Lisa Evans Powell. She's amazing. Tell them a little bit about yourself, Lisa.
Hello, I'm a mom, I'm a volunteer extraordinaire, I'm a social worker. I'm also a doctoral student, and I'm working on my doctorate of social work at USC. And one of the things that I'm here to talk about today is sort of what I'm working on in that program, which has been a passion of mine for the last several years, and that's the elderly population.
I thought it was fascinating because right now when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about addiction, we're talking about neglect, we're talking about feeling disconnected, all this kind of stuff. A lot of times we're focusing on the kids.
Yes.
And we're focusing on the adults with depression, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But we kind of forget, and it's not that sexy to talk about, right? The older population is getting ignored, is getting neglected.
Right. And there's a lot of people who age beautifully. Gracefully, actively. You know, I see lots of 75 and 80-year-olds out there at the gym, in the grocery store, wherever. And that's wonderful. But we also have a good part of the older adult population that isn't aging so well.
Yes.
And that can be due to a whole host of factors. Maybe they've had, lived in poverty. Maybe they have had chronic illness or pain, disability. Maybe they've lost their eyesight and they just can't get out anymore. Maybe it's, lack of transportation and just getting to places makes them not able to do things as much anymore.
So Lisa, tell us what your focus of your doctoral program is.
Okay, so at USC, the Doctor of Social Work program is really focused on social innovation, and each student is really asked to design something, whether it's a program or a product, or even just making shifts in policy or even culture change in a certain area. And so it's based on the grand challenges of social work. And so that I could spend an hour just talking about that. But it suffices to say that one of the grand challenges of social work that has been identified by scholars is social isolation in general. And that's across ages.
Okay.
Right? So it's actually eradicating social isolation, just really trying to get people more connected. And the reasons for that, and the reason it's considered a challenge, such a big challenge, is that there's been a lot of research. It actually has great impact, negative impact on our health and well-being. We know that people have a higher rate of early mortality when they're not socially connected. In fact, and when you look at the older adult population, they've found that people who are older adults who are socially connected have a 50% reduced chance at early death. They've also found that social isolation the link between social isolation and your health is just as strong as the link between smoking and health. So in reality, when we think about issues like public health problems like obesity or smoking, there was a time in the past where people didn't really realize what a big problem it was, and it took time to really get the information out there for people to really understand how harmful these things were.
It affects life expectancy.
Exactly. And social isolation is just like those. It's just that, and the researchers know it.
Right.
And those studying it know it. But it hasn't really gotten out there to the general public to really understand really how deadly it is. And so there's a lot of people out there working on different populations and different issues related to social isolation. I'm focused on social isolation in the elderly. And that's due to just the work I've done the last few years with aging issues and end-of-life issues. I've worked as a hospice social worker, and I've managed a program that was focused on homebound elderly who wanted to continue living independently in their homes, which there's a lot of good reasons for wanting that. I mean, people are generally happier in staying in their own homes, and it's cheaper, both for the people and for society as a whole and our systems, rather than just throwing everybody into institutionalized care. So there's a lot of reasons why we should want to support people to continue living in their own environment. It just gets harder for some people, and especially if you're socially isolated, if you don't have family around, if you're not really connected to any social groups, organizations, if you're, and then you get into issues like, illness and limited mobility, and you can't drive anymore. Right. Maybe you're living on a very limited, most elderly have static incomes. They're living on a set amount every month, social security check or whatever. Right. And at the program I managed, our average client was living on about $1,000 to $1,200 a month social security check. So when you think about California, rents are very high. It's a very high cost of living. Right. So there's just these really this whole mix of really complicated factors when you think about older adults who are socially isolated. Right. So I'm really focused on, how I knew there were gaps in services in this area, and I'm really focused on Ventura County, which is where I live and work. And I knew there were gaps because of my work there, but I sort of dove in deeper into some of that in the last several months, and just kind of was surprised to find that the gaps were even worse than I had imagined, in terms of just in-home types of services that meet the needs of this population, even ways to identify these folks in order to kind of get them the help they need. And on top of all this, the fact that we're not even anywhere close to meeting the needs of this population, we are having major demographic changes in this county, in this area, but also the country. And that our population is aging. Right. And the baby boomers are aging. And so when you look at the numbers of how our numbers of elderly are increasing dramatically over the next decade or so, and this isn't just going to be a short-term issue. This is like the next 30 or 40 years, we're going to have a much higher proportion of elderly. People are living longer, and then we just have more of them. Right. And so when you think about what that means for healthcare systems, for social services, for just how do we, for their families that are trying to caretake for them, we're nowhere near prepared to figure out how do we care for all these people, let alone if they're socially isolated or not.
Well, so many of us too are sandwiched between young kids and the older population. And I just love it, the awareness that Lisa's working really hard to bring in our area, absolutely, like you just said, across the nation. Now in other countries, there's a little bit different mentality perhaps, and we can talk about that in a minute. And we're going to take a little break right now, actually. And then we'll be right back, because I want to talk about what people can do to help, how we can get our kids involved with helping too, how we can take it, because we're going to be those older people one day. We all know this is an age-old problem of how to care for our elderly, but you have some great ideas of what to do about it, and I love it. So we'll be right back, you guys. Please make sure to subscribe to this show and share it, and comment if you like. We could use the encouragement over here. Maybe other people will like the content too and stop on by. Hello, you guys, and welcome back. I'm here with Lisa Evans-Powell. We're talking about elder care and isolation in that population. Lisa, what are the kinds of programs that you do see that do tend to be working out there? I know there's a flower delivery, food, obviously Meals on Wheels. Does that give seniors some sense of connection when someone comes to the door even to deliver like that?
Yes. So those are, you've mentioned some great programs that are out there, and there are some services. I think that meal delivery services like Meals on Wheels is one great program, which, it varies from region to region. Some have great programs, some not so great. And actually what I would like to see, and I'm sort of investigating right now, is the potential of using meal delivery services in our area and adding on a little bit more. Rather than just dropping off the meal and saying, hi, training volunteers to really be able to do a little bit better check, maybe on the elderly client. And I think that's happening like here and there. But, once you have an access, this is an example of a way we actually have of getting to people's homes we know are socially isolated, which is great.
And
let's make sure
they
we're
might not
using
want to
that.
answer the door.
And they may not.
But
Some
if there's
people don't.
food coming, they will.
Right.
So that's a way in.
But for some of those people too, they will tell the driver, you're the only person I talked to all week.
Yeah, see.
So it is a really that's an important example.
Right.
And there are some other, there are a couple like case management type programs where people will go into the homes, case managers, social workers, and work with folks to help them get more connected. But it's just very limited in terms of the numbers they're serving right now.
Right.
And I could start spouting off all the numbers and data of how many folks we have, in that population. Right now, we're meeting a very, very small.
It's very underserved.
So it's figuring out how can we either scale this or kind of add in new programming, set up new programming to meet these the needs of these folks.
Now, let's talk, in order to raise awareness, I love remembering that those people in those homes had a life, have a life now, but there was a lot of exciting stuff going on with them earlier in their lives as well. And we were talking a moment ago about social media technology a little bit, right? So tell everybody what we were talking about as far as your son helping go in there. Because what happens is, I think, when our kids are in preschool or in organizations, with their school, they go on little field trips to meet and sing at the holidays, at the nursing home, right? Right. We don't do that when they're not so cute anymore. No, they're still cute.
Of course they are.
But they're a little stinkier. In a different way.
That's true.
But, the teen population, they have community service hours that they need to do and such like that as well.
Right.
But Lisa has such a great idea about the videotaping thing.
Sharing. I have a lot of ideas.
She's awesome,
and I love the idea of like the intergenerational programs.
Yes.
And there are some, you can kind of see some out there, and I think those have been shown to be really useful to connecting the elderly, getting them some socialization, and also helping our youth learn to appreciate the elderly. We see there's actually in Holland, they have a whole sort of like village of elderly, and I think even people with dementia living with other people.
Like
and so when you think about mixed housing kind of setups where you have mixed ages, when you think about, I think about my kids' preschool in Thousand Oaks, where they had where the nuns retired, and they put a preschool on the site. So you had all the interaction with the older nuns working with the kids. Those kinds of things I think can be really, really important. And as you mentioned, my son with filming, we've talked about going and filming some stories of some folks that are elderly and homebound, and the piece that I love about that, not just him getting involved, is just letting people who are out in the general public get a better sense of who these people are, because I think a lot of people aren't really aware as to how many of these sort of lonely elderly folks are out there. And it would serve two purposes, because those people, the older people, want to tell their story. Yes. So they like to talk. Yes. They could tell the same story over and over and be so happy to do it. Right. And so to catch them on film before they get where they can't speak at all, to catch that moment for their families, or maybe they don't have families, is the problem too. A lot of people don't have families that come visit. Like you were saying, what's the percentage that don't have any visitors at all?
in even the nursing homes.
Right. And there are some
It's
percentages
high.
of, like 60% or even higher of folks that live in nursing homes
Yes.
have nobody to visit them. So
And our family
really
dynamics are
tragic.
so different than they used to be. A lot of people aren't having kids,
Right.
right? So when you turn 80 and you never had any kids, maybe you had nieces and nephews, maybe they live far away,
Right.
really disjointed on that end of the age group.
Right.
And then
And then you add in the cultural attitudes of, American values, really, of, we revere autonomy and independence, and we value youth over old age. And those are cultural norms for sort of, for white Americans, I would say, for sure. I think it varies a little bit when you look at different cultures. But in general, we just don't have a society where the elderly are sort of revered and taken care of as a norm. And so, one of the things that I believe strongly in is that we have to change. When we want to make change, like social change, we really need to make some norm changes or cultural changes. And so one of the things I'm sort of after is, how do we get people more aware? How do we help people understand this issue? How do we get people to care about our elderly?
Right.
And want to do more?
Now, let me go here a little bit with, as far as compassion for other people. Sometimes the only way that we can get there is by realizing that it's going to be us someday too. And oftentimes, if we don't have that caregiving role, even a little bit in our lives, when we get older, we're going to be really stubborn about, I want my driver's license for as long as possible, right? I want that autonomy, and ignoring my own aging. So even the older population, they get so set in their ways, and they refuse help so many times.
Yes.
I had my grandfather, he moved to a mobile home park because he wanted to watch TV all day in his underwear. He didn't want anybody bothering him. Even the older and older he got, he hated it when a neighbor would come. I mean, he was by himself. The older ladies were trying to bring him food, and he would get irritated. He's like, go away, I'm trying to watch TV.
I believe it. And that's a classic example of, he's been independent his whole life.
Yes.
He wants to hold on to his independence.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge, especially in American culture where we revere
a lot of us love going to a hotel for that reason. Away from the kids. I just want a channel change.
I know, right?
But when it becomes
it's really, really hard.
debilitating.
Yes, and that loss of independence is so hard. And it's just so ingrained, I think, in our culture that happens. When I was managing the Oasis program, we would get calls all the time from both elderly but also their families. And I can't tell you how many times we would have like a family person calling going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with my 95-year-old mom, and I knew I should have done something 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but we just didn't, and here we are, and now we're in crisis mode, and they always felt so bad about it, and I would just say, that's what most people are doing. They wait until it kind of gets to that, like, I have to deal with it now.
So I'm so glad you're saying that, because it's the same for anybody out there that's tuning in. Lose the guilt and the self-judgment about it too. It's never too late to change your mindset and your attitude towards it. It's never too late. It's okay if your neighbor has their grandmother living with them for the last 20 years of that grandmother's life. That's a beautiful thing. But if you aren't doing that, that's okay too. But it's so important to have that awareness of what's appropriate for your family.
But I think also, I think we all feel like we're going to age great. I'm going to be, 90 years old, and I'm still going to be out there doing my thing. And the reality is we don't really know. I mean, and I think we want to think that the aging thing is going to happen gracefully, but it doesn't for everybody. And so, it's really important for people to start thinking earlier when they're, middle-aged or even earlier about, okay, how am I staying connected to people? Whether it's with your family or maybe you're part of a religious group or other, getting other social support, so that if you do get to a point where you develop an illness or a disability or something that really inhibits your mobility or just ability to get out there, you have some supports for getting what you need.
Nice.
And staying connected.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Lisa, for hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
Really. I mean, I think it's so important to focus on that poppopulation.
It is. And obviously I feel very passionate about this population and this issue.
Yeah.
And people who work with seniors we're all like that.
Yeah.
And we're sort of
we're sort
of a small but mighty group.
Yeah. It's a special population.
But we really want to get more people to care and get involved.
And I'm so glad to share you with whoever is out there watching or listening, because it is so important. If you have a passion for something, use your voice and be as strong in that as you can be. Everybody doesn't need to be into the elder care field, but we need the ones that are there to be strong,
right?
Like you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And I will talk to you soon. Remember, you are not alone. It may seem like life is cold and harsh. You are one of so many petals on the tree. Whether you are a new bud or a wise, well-loved flower, we're here for you. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Turn on those notifications so that you are alerted when new videos come out. I am Maria, just in case you forgot.